Wishing everybody a good evening and welcome to the community forum for the Longfellow Building for Our Future School. This is an exciting evening for us, and hopefully you'll be able to see the progress we've made and to listen to the presentation closely with our lead architect, Mr. Mark Lee, who I'll be introducing here to you in a moment. He is also joined tonight with Emily Waugh from Harriman Associates. So please listen carefully and absorb this material. And again, as I said, we're very excited to make this presentation to the community this evening. Thank you. Mr. Mark Lee, Harriman, Principal Architect, BFOF, Longfellow Community Forum.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you everyone for taking time tonight to join with us. This is our third forum to discuss the renovations to Longfellow Elementary School. And we're going to cover some topics as shown on the screen. Welcome and introductions. Thank you, Steve. The second item we're going to review is a design statement that we established as a community a year ago when we began this process. We will look at an inventory of needs and understanding what the highest priority needs of the school are to be addressed in the renovation. We'll look at what we call floor plans, and those are a diagram of the building, and we'll look at renderings of what the changes to the building will look like. We'll also cover some improvements that are being made to the school in response to COVID. There's an aspect of the project that is addressing LEED requirements by the city. That's leadership in energy and environmental design. Those are sustainability or green guidelines. And then we'll look at the project timeline. And finally, we'll leave some time for questions and answers. And so, as I said, approximately 1 year ago, we met as a group at Longfellow when we could meet together, and we workshopped some aspects of the culture and what we called the essence of the school, the character of the school. And we put those into words, and we looked at images that seem to capture what we feel is important about Longfellow. And so the aspects of Longfellow that were important were its role as a neighborhood center, its connection to the neighborhood and it being someplace that is easily accessed by walking to it, its walkability. And also there's an aspect of Longfellow that feels like it's a historic building and the architecture is special, and we wanted to make sure we didn't lose that. The groups pulled together to come up with a design statement that reads, nurturing the roots of community to grow the hearts and minds of learners for a dynamic world. And that's where we began our process. The next step was to evaluate what the facility needs were. And those rose in 4 categories, including primarily upgrades to the classroom environment. And so the school was constructed many years ago and has not seen a significant upgrade to the classroom infrastructure or the spaces that the most students spend most of the day in. Also, when it was built at a time when we were using building materials that we now understand to be not as healthy, and so there's some abatement of materials that needs to take place in the building. Those will be part of the classroom upgrades. Also, the entrance will be made accessible and secure. And so, like we're doing in the new schools in Portland and the renovation of the elementary schools, we are creating security vestibules and security improvements to the school. So a new primary secure entrance is a need. Accessibility needs also extend to how to move from one level of the building to the other. And right now, there is no way to go from the first level down to the lower level or up to the second floor. And so we're going to install an elevator. And the last category has to do with miscellaneous code upgrades and accessibility upgrades. And building codes have evolved some since the building was constructed. And so we're going to be making improvements to keep up with those. Those include upgrades to the fire alarm system, to some of the life safety building codes, and ensuring that the building has adequate sprinkler coverage. Accessibility upgrades will also include accessible toilets on every level, accessible drinking fountains, and access to all primary public spaces. The next thing we're going to review are the diagrams that we talked about, the floor plans. So the plan on the screen right now is the lower level. Longfellow has 3 levels. The lower level right now, you can mostly see in the shades of gray. The spaces are in the shades of gray on the left-hand side of the screen. And the proposal is to add on an addition, and you can see the additions highlighted in green. The major renovation spaces are in blue, and lighter renovations are in light gray. The big changes proposed for Longfellow are to create some learning spaces. Those are shown in the upper left-hand corner. There are 2 small instruction rooms. Also proposed is a cafeteria with a warming kitchen. And I'm circling my mouse on that now. I don't know if that can be seen, but those are directly across from the reading and ELL rooms. And then we're going to renovate to create accessible toilet rooms in the area in blue. Also shown on this plan is the elevator addition, which is that small green square in the lower left corner of the building. And so that elevator will connect all 3 levels. The next floor is the first floor or main floor. And moving from the right side of the building, we'll go to the left side. The right side in green is a new handicap accessible ramp and stairs to a new security vestibule. There'll be a new administration renovation so that the administration is adjacent to the security vestibule. They'll be able to monitor everyone coming in and out of the building. And then there are a series of other renovations shown in blue in the lower right corner that include the nurse area, OT/PT, administrative conference room, and then a series of offices. Also, there are renovations to the primary toilet rooms for staff and for students. And then there are renovations to the classrooms shown as the kindergarten in blue on the left-hand side of the page. And above the lower level addition, is a new pre-K wing, that is, or new pre-K room, that is shown in the upper left corner. And there are a series of other spaces. The classrooms that are shown off of the corridor are intended to be renovated with new finishes, new ceilings, new flooring, new lighting, new power, and new instructional technology. The existing gymnasium will remain as a gym, and the library will remain where it is shown as well. The upper level will have classroom renovations, all those rooms in gray. We will update the toilet rooms to become accessible. We will add single-user toilet rooms, and the elevator will reach to the top level of the school. This image shows what the building very much looks like now, with the addition of the handicap accessible ramp and the security vestibule inside the pair doors shown here. So the doors directly adjacent to the parking are the ones that will become the primary entrance to come and go from the school. The next rendering shows what the additions would look like on the back of the school. On the far right, you can see the existing, more historic architecture. The upper level is the pre-K classroom, and the lower level are the two smaller instruction spaces. And then the large windowed space to the left is the proposed cafeteria and warming kitchen. And the style is intended to complement the scale and materials of the historic architecture without replicating the beautiful detailing of the existing school. I'll talk a little bit about some of the improvements that are already underway in response to COVID-19, as well as some improvements intended as part of the renovation. So currently there are air exchange units that circulate the room air in the nurse area where we're creating separation rooms. And so those air exchange units have a UV ultraviolet light that is used to disinfect the air. And so those are being installed in the nurse areas of the school, and the Portland Public Schools facilities staff is currently doing that work. Also underway is our repairs to windows, so that there is at least one window that can open easily in each classroom to allow in fresh air. The facility staff have also been busy ensuring that there are hand sanitizing stations in all areas of the school. And lastly, they have spent a great deal of effort cleaning and servicing existing ventilation systems, those systems that bring in fresh air into the building, and also installing equipment to help disinfect air coming in from the outside as well. That's the installation of ionizers. In addition to these, the renovation will also do several things. It will include a reconfiguration of the nurse office area to create the separation or isolation areas. And where we're upgrading all of the toilet rooms, we will install touchless fixtures in the plumbing fixtures. Next, as we talked about, the City of Portland has a requirement for new projects at a certain level to comply with LEED standards. As I said, that stands for Leadership and Energy and Environmental Design. We are working with the firm Thornton Tomasetti to assist us in evaluating our design and ensuring we comply with the requirements. These requirements are in several categories, and they all support creating a more sustainable and healthy environment. So those include the building's location and its connection to transportation, the site development, water efficiency, energy and atmosphere, materials and resources. And the energy and atmosphere is how energy efficient we can make the building systems. The materials and resources are using low impact building materials. The next category is indoor environmental quality. That's ensuring that the materials we use create healthy indoor environments and that we are creating spaces that will operate to ensure healthy indoor environments. So those are the primary categories, and we are required to be certified to LEED Silver, which is 50 points, and we are working diligently to get to that point. So the new designs, in addition to addressing the most important facility needs, will also do it in a sustainable manner. And lastly, I'll run through where we've been on the schedule and what their next steps are. As I said, we began this process fairly amount of time ago, several months ago, in October of last year. We have since then been moving through our concept designs and into getting the drawings ready to put out to bid for a contractor. Through that process, we've had several check-ins with the community as well as the staff and stakeholders at the school level, and the building committee at two levels, the district advisory building committee and the building level advisory committee. And we've been meeting monthly with those groups. We are now in the last stages of finalizing the design and getting it ready to advertise for contractors to build. We have some permitting steps that we're doing in concert with that. We anticipate that that bidding will take place this fall and that the contract would be awarded in the spring, or the winter rather, and that construction will start in the spring of 2021. We anticipate that the Longfellow construction will take approximately 28 to 30 months. And so it will begin in the spring of 2021. And we anticipate that the renovations will be complete in the fall of 2023. So with that, we wanted to make sure that we left some time for questions and answers, and we can open it up now for that. So I believe there's a question by Luke Truman.
Hey, Mark. I just wanted to, I put it in the chat, but maybe you didn't get it. I was curious about the new addition and whether or not it was going to be tied into the older heating cooling system, or if it's going to have a new HVAC system.
Great, thank you, Luke. So Luke's question was, are we tying the additions systems into the existing or having new systems? And so there's a couple things. The electrical power will be serviced from the existing building, and so we'll extend circuits into the new building. And then the heat will actually be generated. The heat for Longfellow is actually generated at Deering, and it comes over as steam, and we'll be using the same heating plant that services the Longfellow School for its primary heating source. The ventilation system, though, will be entirely new, and so it will have new air handlers that will service the addition.
Thank you.
Great. I think there's another question by Stephen Scharf.
Hi, Stephen Scharf. First, I want to follow up on that issue with the steam heat. I'm like sort of surprised we're staying with that, considering it's probably the most inefficient way of heating a building that's especially a second building that's not attached to the first building. So I'm really surprised that you're staying with that as to, and it's very hard to regulate it. So, but my real question is separate. You said there was no conversation here about the cost escalation and what got taken out of this project because of cost escalation and that kind of stuff. So I'd like to hear about that for all three schools.
Sure. And so some of the details that are surrounded the amount of work there, amount of scope as we call it, were presented in the second committee forum, but I'll try to cover much of that now. When we evaluated the priorities of all three schools and looked at the many things that could be improved, we identified the highest priorities as we've shown here. The items that we would have liked to have spent more investment on were things such as through most of the schools being able to create a more efficient envelope to the building, and looked at improving the efficiency of some of the HVAC, the systems that are there in the building itself. And we had to evaluate spending money in those investments versus making improvements to the learning environments. And so from the very, very early concept of the project back before the bond vote passed, there was a desire to invest in both the learning spaces and in a lot of the building systems. What we did was make a strategic decision to invest in the learning spaces and understand that over time, there may be capital dollars that could be invested in upgrading some of the mechanical systems. Some of that actually has been done through the preparations for COVID. There have been some upgrades made to some of the building systems, but by and large, the big difference was that through escalation that was not anticipated back when the project was bonded, we've had to reduce some of the investment in the building systems themselves. What we've done, though, is looked carefully. The new additions are designed with a high degree of efficiency and thermal insulation in the envelopes, and so where we are making new areas on the building, we're making that level of investment. So and that is true. That's balance that we talked about is true at all three of the schools.
Mark, there are some questions on the Q&A section
Right.
at the bottom of your screen. Could we attend to those, please?
Yes, let me see if I can find those Q&A questions here. There we go. Oh, very good. Thank you, Grace. The question says, is the graphic just shown of the rear building addition? There was a car shown in the lower playground area. Is there a new road or driveway being installed across the back of the school? I will go back to that drawing so we can see what the question is asking. So right now, there is an access drive that comes up from the Deering parking, the lower or backside Deering parking, to come into it. The car just represents, there's not intended to be any degree of traffic that goes through there. The car shows where there is an access drive that comes around to deliveries for the warming kitchen. And so that car, I think, just came and dropped off something at the kitchen and is leaving. But no, there's no through traffic at that side of the building. The next one says, regarding the school renovations and referendum question C, if it is passed, can you tell us anything about the timing of filing permits, possibly getting grandfathered before it would take effect, and cost increases if it's not grandfathered relative to new requirements of re-roof and LEED? So this question is about the proposed Portland New Green Deal that voters will have an opportunity to weigh in on. If it is passed, our understanding is that by current city ordinance, it would take effect 30 days after the confirmation of the vote. The impacts to the projects right now would take effect. What we think is that the building would possibly be grandfathered if it's permitted before the expiration of that 30-day window, before the new requirements take effect. We are still reviewing that to understand the full impact of the ordinance change, the proposed ordinance change. In terms of the cost impact to the project, the real area that we think it's going to impact in the design in two ways. One, it's a stretch energy code that requires us to meet a higher standard for the energy efficiency of the building, not just the new addition, but the whole building. And so to meet that energy standard means that we would have to invest in more insulation on the interior of the building and potentially replacement of some existing equipment. And we would either have to remove some of the scope of the proposed work right now to the education spaces to pay for that, or come, that's really where it would be. We don't anticipate that we would change the total project budget, and so we would have to shift funds to meet that requirement. So, and we haven't quantified what that amount would be right now.
There is another question from Scott.
The question says, I joined late, but was wondering if you could show the site plan and discuss impacts to play spaces around the school. Thank you, Scott. We didn't include the site plan. There is not a lot of work anticipated for the site. I will bring up the floor plan, the lower level floor plan or main level floor plan, so that we can perhaps talk a little bit about where the impact is. And so what we don't see in the plan, but you can understand if you could draw a line from the new green addition straight across going to the right, that is the upper courtyard that is has a lot of great outdoor and nature-based spaces. And so we would be interrupting a little bit of that when we build the new addition and the elevator, but the intent is to restore it to its function right now. We don't anticipate a significant amount of disruption to the play areas at the rear of the building. We know we will have access to that warming kitchen, but beyond that, we're going to preserve the outdoor play spaces on the backside of the building. There are no other significant site improvements or changes planned for the building. There's another question that says, it looked like the cafeteria on the new floor plan was 2 levels, but the pictures make it look like it's just 1. Is there 1 or 2 levels in the new cafeteria? The answer to that is that there is 1 level. And so the floor plan that's on the screen now has a label that says upper cafeteria. That is just the space above, that it's a taller space. And so we label that, but it is 1 level. So there are 2 levels on the left-hand side of the addition. The upper level is a pre-K room. The lower level are the ELL space and the other resource reading space. So, but there's 1 cafeteria volume that is slightly larger than a standard story. And there's another question that says, how could this be permitted in the next 60 days? Does it need to have planning board review, which has not even started yet? We actually have begun the planning board process, and we anticipate that will fall in line with what we need to accomplish. The other aspect that we're reviewing is that the application needs to be submitted, so we need to be moving along in that process. And so we have begun the planning board process for all 3 schools at this time. And then there's another question that on the topic of COVID. And the question is, reducing risk of COVID is my primary concern. Air circulation in classrooms would be better if 2 windows per room can be opened. Can we make this a goal? Also, windows able to open are only good if teachers can open them. How will this be monitored? Well, so the good news is, and Mr. Stilfen can address this to some degree, but the good news is that they are making improvements. All of the classroom windows, or a good majority of them in the building, are operable. They're large windows, and over the course of time, they have become more difficult to open, as any of the teachers can tell you. And so there are improvements being made to the balances and to the moving parts to make sure that they can open easier. In addition to the open windows, there has been an evaluation of the ventilation units to make sure that they're operating and being able to draw in fresh air. Next question. Would Longfellow parents be able to fundraise and include a renovation of the playground involving the hill below it and bring the playground to the interactive, inclusive, and nature-based level of many of the other elementary schools in the city? I think the short answer is absolutely. We think that there's opportunities to become involved in creating improved nature-based play spaces. And so with the renovation addition, the addition will, as I said earlier, have a light impact over on that corner of the site. But there's opportunity both in the center area as well as in the back to enhance the play spaces. Another question on the aspect of the Green New Deal regarding the question C question. If it passes, do you think it's likely you will be able to get the permits in 30 days after election results. And we're reviewing that with various parties right now, but we don't believe that the permits have to be secured, but they certainly have to be submitted for permitting in that period of time. But we're reviewing that, and there are other aspects of that we're not entirely sure how Question C will impact the project, but we're evaluating the language of the proposed ordinance with experts that can help us understand those issues. And so our effort is to look at options and proceed in the way that is the best outcome for the students and for the school district. We'll wait another moment or so if there are any other questions. There's a question that says, have school enrollments been updated to determine if they are going up or down? At the outset of this project, we evaluated what school enrollments were to ensure that we had enough capacity to address the current and the trending school enrollments. And so the answer is that the proposed changes for Longfellow will address the current enrollment and actually will allow for the expansion with the pre-K room. And so the pre-K room is currently not a space that the school has, and so we're adding some capacity in that level, but the remaining classrooms have enough capacity to absorb some increase should it happen. And with respect to the current enrollments across the entire district, the last enrollment update we had was at the outset of the LICEV school project. Some additional questions that have come up. What is the fuel source of the steam at Deering? For that, I'll turn to Mr. Stilfen. Steve, are you able to answer that?
Yes, could you read that again, Mark?
Absolutely. The question was, what is the fuel source of the steam at Deering?
Natural gas.
Great.
And the boilers at the Deering school were replaced within 6 years. So they're more closely modulated and controlled with modern controls and provide a really controlled and qualified amount of steam, which is condensed in the units in Longfellow. Longfellow does have its own HVAC system in the univents and exhaust system. The interchange of the heat from the steam is turned to water, hot water in Longfellow. We've done extensive cleaning, repairs, control repairs to all of the unit ventilators throughout the district, including Longfellow. It's our opinion that although old, when properly calibrated and maintained, these units will be serviceable for the tasks they're assigned to do. Now, when you couple that with COVID concerns and windows, we're replacing windows that are beyond repair, and we're also repairing windows that are, as Mark described, just heavy, not really opened a lot, and in some cases over the years have been, nailed shut. So we're moving away from that model, obviously, and one window is not our standard. One window was our approach in classrooms where we had these type of windows to at least have a window in the first run by here that opened. So in combination with the units themselves being fully maintained and operational and parts being replaced, we've inserted the ionizer devices, which Mark has talked about a little bit, and I can go into in a lot of depth on, and they're the best technologies available for deactivating COVID. Every school in the district, univents in classrooms and their main supply HVAC units on the rooftops will have these units installed. So our air will be ionized in those areas to the square footage required by the supply of each of those units. So I'm feeling really good about where our air quality is overall, and specific to COVID. We're using the latest technologies. So I'm really excited about this. It's a big commitment from the district, and absolutely looking for benefits from these technologies. It's a big concern for all of us, air quality. And although we may not have said we're replacing all of the HVAC and doing classrooms, in a sense, learning spaces, air quality is being markedly improved throughout the district, and including Longfellow. So I'm anticipating a fully functional control side for Longfellow, from thermostats and operating unit ventilators to provide very good quality air to the school.
Great. Thank you, Steve. There are a few more questions. One question says, does the proposed schedule address how students will be using the school while construction is happening? And so the schedule that I outlined of 28 to 30 months does address that. What we will be doing is having a couple of portable classroom units that will be placed in the parking lot. Right now it's planned to the right of the entrance, and there will be sections of the building where the students in those classrooms will use the portable classrooms, and that area will be secured for the contractor to renovate. And then once that area is complete, then the students will move back into the newly renovated areas, and the next section of classrooms will use the portable classrooms. So we're creating swing space in the portables to then go through and renovate the multiple areas of the school. A lot of the really intensive renovation work will be done in the summers when the building is not occupied. Another question says, will there be another public comment session or forum? And at this point, we don't anticipate another public forum, but I also want everyone to know that there is a website where they can find all of this information, and that website can be found through a link. If you go to the Portland Public Schools website, you will find a link to the BFOF project website. The BFOF project website has all of the minutes and presentations of all the meetings, and it has an option of you can submit a question or email a question there, and we get to those questions and respond to them. So there's a way of keeping updated on the project and submitting questions through that website. If you type in PPS BFOFprojects.com, you'll find that website. So that's PPS BFOFprojects.com. Very good. Well, we thank all of you for coming tonight and taking your time to learn more about the project and the proposed plan changes for the Longfellow School. Thank you to everyone to help facilitate making this happen and getting the word out, and encourage you all to continue to stay tuned in to everything that's going on with it. And if you do have questions, please submit them, and we'd love to be able to answer those. So thank you all very, very much, and have a good evening.